Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and today we're going to be talking about the Mi 10i. Now, this is a smartphone that Xiaomi is literally just launched in the country. We've had it for a few days, had the chance to test it out, see what it can do well, where it falters, etc. And we've got all of those details right here for you. But before we get into the details, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button on our channel, and of course hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any future updates from us. With that out of the way, let's begin. First, let's talk about the most important thing about this phone, and that is the specs. The Mi 10i is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 750G chipset. It's an octa-core processor, but also supports 5G. In fact, it has a 5G modem built in. In addition to that, this particular unit that we have comes with 8 GB of RAM on board, whereas there is also a cheaper 6 GB RAM variant available. The storage on both of them is 128 gigs. The real star of this phone, however, seems to be the 108 megapixel camera on the back. Now, Xiaomi says this is the first smartphone in the country to have the Samsung HM2 sensor on board. This is a 108 megapixel sensor. We've seen Xiaomi produce other phones also with the 108 sensor on board, but this is different. There are two particular reasons. The first one is this is slightly smaller in comparison to Samsung's HM1. The HM1 measures 1 by 1.33 inches in diagonal length, whereas this particular sensor measures 1 by 1.53 inches in diagonal length, making this HM2 sensor slightly smaller, resulting in just slightly smaller pixel pitch as well. The pixel pitch on this is 0.7 microns, whereas the 108 megapixel sensor on, let's say for example, the Mi 10T Pro, a little bit of a tongue twister there, is a 0.8 microns. Anyway, with that out of the way, the other camera features on here also include an 8 megapixel ultra wide sensor, a 2 megapixel depth sensor, and of course a 2 megapixel macro camera as well. Last but not the least, you've got the display, which is another star performer over here. It's an IPS LCD panel, and I know that's a bone of contention with many people, but it also has a refresh rate of 120 Hz. So at this price point, 120 Hz FHD plus resolution is achievable on IPS, and it is definitely a very impressive panel. We'll talk about that in a later section. Last but not the least, you've got the battery, which is a 4820 milliamp hour battery and supports 33 watt fast charging and is capable of being topped up 0 to about 60ish% in about 35 minutes. It's an impressive number by any metric you see, but we'll talk about the battery life as well. So let's talk about the camera first. The primary 108 megapixel sensor is accompanied by a 26mm field of view lens. There is no optical image stabilization on board, but if you do shoot video, you have EIS. First, let's talk photos though. The 108 megapixel output is definitely impressive. It's a detailed rich image, and unfortunately, or fortunately for that matter, we've been shooting at a time when the Delhi sky is mostly overcast. We've had rains recently, and there's also been a lot of cloud cover and fog, so in general the exposure tends to be a lot more balanced. The result is extremely pleasing colors, regardless of whether they're blues, oranges, reds, or greens. It's actually very nice to see such pleasing colors coming out of a camera that is not a flagship. Now, when you're shooting in the bin mode, the image quality is of course very impressive. You get better colors, better dynamic range, and somewhat okay details, but the 108 megapixel output does give you better details. That's difference number one. Difference number two is when you're shooting in the bin mode, the autofocus system for some reason tends to work slightly better. It's faster to lock on, and in the 108 megapixel mode, it tends to sort of go through the entire focus range before locking focus. Last but not the least, you've also got time between shots. When shooting in the bin mode, you're going from shot to shot almost instantaneously. But in the 108 megapixel mode, you have almost a 3 to 4 second delay between shots, because that's just how long it takes for the phone, the SoC, the ISP to sort of process that 108 megapixels worth of data, write it to file, apply the tone mapping, etc. It's a tedious process. So if you do want to shoot at 108 megapixel, you do have to make sure that you are not trying to shoot a decisive moment, but are instead actually shooting something that's stationary, planned, and you can take your time shooting it. One area where the 108 megapixel sensor also does very well is with respect to close-ups. Now you could shoot at 108 megapixel resolution and zoom into the photo and get a very pseudo macro shot. You could also shoot in the bin mode and achieve a very similar result, albeit at a loss of resolution. But interestingly, the bin mode allows you to get a lot closer to the subject than when you're shooting in the native 108 megapixel mode. But if you do want to get like really close, then switch over to the dedicated macro lens. That's what it's there for. With a resolution of 2 megapixels, it's just about enough to make it a social media worthy photo. Now, there are a few caveats here. One, there is no autofocus available and neither is there any focus peaking. So you actually don't know whether what you're shooting is in focus or not. You sort of have to keep lean in and out to make sure you get the shot in focus. But because there's no stabilization either, the very act of just breathing could result in an out of focus photo. That's something that I experience quite a lot, despite the fact that I shoot with a professional macro lens practically all the time. No matter how much practice you have, the lack of autofocus and focus peaking and stabilization will result in missed shots nonetheless. However, when you do get the shot right, during daytime with plenty of light, the results are actually very nice. They're very usable. You'll definitely impress people when you say, hey, this is out of a smartphone and not an actual camera. But anytime the light gets lower, then let's say, even at dusk, your results are going to be pretty bad. The depth sensor does help with portrait mode, which actually is quite impressive on this smartphone. You can adjust the aperture, go between a simulated f1 to about f13, and you can see that the bokeh actually changes, and that's where the depth sensor comes in. The ultra wide camera again on this is very nice. Daytime, again, no autofocus, which severely limits the way you can frame your shots, limiting the use cases to mostly just landscape and eliminating any kind of play with subjects in the foreground. The output is definitely good, though very much passable for social media. In fact, if you worked on your image in edit, you could even print A4 or something of that sort. Where the cameras do change in nature is in low light. Now with low light, let's first talk about the 108 primary camera. Because it's been raining for the last few days, it was difficult to go out at night to shoot. So testing the camera indoors using the standard bookshelf that I have in my house, which serves as a camera test sample. Very interestingly, in normal mode, the shutter speed was fairly long. The image was well exposed with shadows being crunched ever so slightly. But what was noticeable was the lack of sharpness. But when you switch over to the night mode, again with the camera on a tripod, take the same shot, there are two things that become noticeable. The shadows are slightly better. There's more detail available in the shadows just to the naked eye. And I'm not even talking pixel peeping. And the image is definitely sharper. So, and interestingly, both the exposures are of nearly the same time. So there is a difference between the output of the image when shot in night mode versus regular, even though the shutter is perceived to be open for the same duration of time. So there's that. From the ultra wide camera, even though it does support night mode, the results are not very impressive. You do see a lot of noise and significant softening of the frame, not just in the center but in the corners as well. So that's about the photo capabilities. In terms of video, you get 4K 30 FPS out of the 108 megapixel sensor, and you get 1080p 60 out of the ultra wide. The front camera also supports 1080p video recording, and the front camera also is a very good stills camera by that matter, because not only without, like, if you don't turn on the photo effects, you still get good output, but there are 4 different photo effects to choose from in terms of slimming down your face, making your skin softer, or maybe just making your eyes look bigger. So there's a bunch of these features built in. If you like something like that, the phone does deliver on the promise of these effects, does it well. So you can see all of the samples for whatever I've talked about in this video. So next up, after the camera, we have this gorgeous display, the 6.67 inch IPS LCD panel. Now, a lot of people have a problem with the fact that Xiaomi is using IPS LCD instead of AMOLED. But the flip side is, well, you do get a 120 Hz refresh rate panel, which is actually quite impressive at this price point. Now, if you are just hell-bent on AMOLED, then, well, there are competitors that you could go with, because if that's a priority for you, this is just not the phone. However, this panel by itself does offer quite a few features that make it very nice to have, simply put. Firstly, it's HDR10 plus certified, means that it supports the HDR10 plus content playback. However, at the time of testing, Netflix HDR playback was not available on the phone. Netflix does need to certify devices, they do so in a rolling manner, and we do expect that compatibility to make its way onto the phone in a in the next few months at best. It is Widevine L1 certified, so you do know that it will support 1080p and other such resolution content from premium players like Amazon Prime, Hotstar, Netflix, etc. The peak brightness on this display, as measured by us, was about a 350 nits, which is great if you're indoors. But once you do go outdoors, there is a problem with this entire setup. What happens is that unless you're looking at the phone directly, and even if as long as there's no angles involved, the visibility is just about okay for reading text. But if you're taking photos, especially at an awkward angle, the reflectance on the screen is far too high. Because of the reflections, it makes your actual frame hard to see. And if you're watching a movie, again, reflections are going to hamper the experience a lot. In fact, while trying to shoot the display for this review, we had quite a lot of difficulty getting the on-screen items visible on camera, and it really took a lot of work to just make sure we could cut out the reflections as much as possible. Reflections are an issue. It could be due to the screen protector that's pre-applied, but in case you don't want to have to deal with that, I would strongly recommend getting a matte screen protector, removing the one that's on board and just applying the other one. 350 nits of brightness is actually quite sufficient to make your content legible indoors and outdoors, and it's not the brightness of the display that's a problem, mind you, it's the reflections. Finally, let's talk about the battery life on the Mi 10i. The 4820 milliamp hour battery actually delivers about one whole day's worth of heavy usage. When I say heavy, I'm talking about 1.5 hours of gaming, as I did for testing this phone. Lots of taking photos, lots of taking videos, plenty of calls, almost all day on WhatsApp, connected via the web, having a Bluetooth headphone connected to the phone to play back music. And with all of that usage built in, about from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. is when I was able to use the phone. And at 11 p.m. is when the battery gave me a 20% warning. Now that's actually very impressive. That's fairly standard, in fact, for most smartphones. And if you don't have such unrealistic use case scenarios like we do, your battery life will definitely extend into the next day easily. The other great thing is the phone supports 33-watt fast charging, with 0 to 60% being topped up in about 35 minutes. That is still a good enough time frame to sort of make sure the phone is topped up with enough battery to get you through the day. Literally, that's how much time it takes for me to get ready in the morning, have breakfast. So, by the time I'm ready to go, the phone is charged up to a sufficient amount to get me through the day. Battery life is not going to be a problem unless you do some funny business and try to root the phone or try to install third-party apps through not secure means. So that could definitely screw up the battery life on this. I do want to note though, however, this battery life was achieved with the display set to 60 hertz and not 120. So if you do use the 120 hertz refresh rate, your battery life could be slightly lower. The last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the built-in design. Now, I know that typically that's sort of what we start with, and normally I would do that too, but I did want to save one of the best features of this phone for last. Now, the Pacific sunrise finish is actually really nice. It simulates the sunrise over the ocean. So you have the soft orange hue at the bottom and moving all the way up to blue to sort of give you that sky effect. The camera bump in the middle is pretty massive, but when you put this phone in its designated TPU case, which you get in the box, the bump disappears completely. The case sort of blends very nicely with this. The other cool thing about this phone is that it is IP53 rated, which means you do get some level of water resistance certified. It's splash resistant, which means if you get caught in a downpour while the phone is in your pocket, it's not going to get bricked. It's likely going to survive. And the reason it's IP53 and maybe not anything higher is because you also, besides the USB Type-C port at the bottom, you also have a headphone jack. And that's pretty amazing. The other really cool thing about this phone is that it comes with a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is something that I absolutely love. I mean, Face ID is fine. In-display fingerprint sensors are, in my opinion, gimmicky at best. But this physical fingerprint sensors have always been super fast, very secure, and that's what you get on this phone as well. Unlocking is very quick and it just works. regardless, and you can use any part of your registered thumb to sort of have it unlock. It's very ergonomical and a natural placement as well, so that works. So let's conclude this review of the Mi 10i. In terms of performance, this phone does deliver on the promise of good gaming, given that it has a G series chipset from Qualcomm. Uh, Gaming on this is fine, whether it's Call of Duty Mobile, if it's Free Fire or Asphalt 9, which is what we've been playing on this. So you won't have an issue with respect to that. There is also no problem with heat, by the way. If you're doing, I was gaming for an hour and a half the other night, and the phone barely got warm. So it could be because it's winters, but my room was pretty warm. So I don't think that's going to be a factor at all to worry about. The battery life is definitely nice. The camera is, I would like to say the camera is impressive. The reason I would not give it top notch marks is because when shooting in 108 megapixel mode, there is delay in both the autofocus and time between shots, which does limit the use case of that resolution. The bin result is definitely impressive. Overall, it does deliver during daytime and low light as well. The display is really nice. I mean, the reflections are definitely a problem, but I've mostly been indoors. We've all, in fact, been living indoors for a while, so I don't see that as a big problem. It's bright enough. It is capable of playing back HDR content. YouTube HDR will look just fine on this. Netflix should certify the device very soon. And the battery life is also decent enough to get you through the day for all of your needs. So overall, the Mi 10i does get some very solid points from us, and this is a device that I would definitely recommend in case you're looking for a solid performer. Last but not the least, by the way, I know a lot of you will ask about ads. So far so good. There have been no ads in the UI of any sort, but if that changes, I will definitely update the text-based review on our website. That's going to be out as well. So thank you guys for watching this video. Before you leave, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any questions regarding the Mi 10i, make sure to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one.